Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 quick match gameplay. This time around we are on the ruins of Enduil playing as the Wood Elves against the forces of the Vampire Coast. And this was not a match I was originally going to cast, but having just done a video explaining what you can do to kite and how best to kite, I figured this might be a good example of a kite build and sort of demonstrate a build where you can really kite an opponent down, work around their weaknesses, and maximize the value of your kiting. So going in against Vampire Coast. Of course, Vampire Coast is a very slow faction. They're one of the ideal factions, really. If you've got long-range shooting, they're an ideal faction to kite against. Because sure, they've got artillery, sure, they've got some mid to long-range stuff, but they have no shields. Their infantry is very slow. Their small handful of fast units are generally pretty easy to shut down. And so I think this is a good sort of match to examine this kiting. So going in as Wood Elves in this matchup. If you try to go head-to-head in a sort of blunt force brawl, there are a lot of ways it can go very, very wrong. You can get bogged down. You're probably going to be whittled down by mass shooting. They've got artillery, which can really soften up things like war dancers or eternal guard, all that sort of stuff. Basically, all your infantry is really vulnerable. Cannons can destroy your wild riders very, very effectively. And if you try to go with a conventional shooting build, it is a bit viable, but obviously your infantry is much squishier than, say, dwarves, and it's much more expensive than Empire or High Elves, especially your shooting infantry, but also your fodder front line, which makes it a bit more difficult to go with those super wide, dirt cheap compositions. And so what I've kind of decided to do here is a bit of a hybrid kite build. And for my Lord running with the Tree Man, not much to be said for him. I think he's basically, the only reason I bring him here is to have some magic. You don't even have to bring him. You can bring a Rhine or something if you want. This is one of the matchups where I think you can get away without a caster. But we do have Awakening of the Wood, Earthblood, Call of the Woods, Life Bloom, and then Power Stone. So he's going to be fairly tanky Lord. Obviously 7,300 HP. He's got good melee attack, melee defense, give or take. It's not amazing, but all in all, his close combat stats are all right. He's very hard to break. Very tanky. He actually has a combined missile resist of 35%. That's before the armor comes in, so very, very survivable. And he can give you some good support. Alongside him, two heroes. We do have two Waystalkers. These guys, great unit. Sniper, a sniper hero, the only one in the game. They do have snipes, so they can fire while moving, while hidden, which is pretty crazy. Here, I've kind of brought them a bit stripped down. One of them does have the True Sight giving them slightly more damage, but unfortunately he isn't close to his buddy, so they're actually not both getting benefits of it. And we're going to be immediately looking to snipe away at the Queen Bess because she's such a big nuisance. Now for the rest of the build, front line of Dryads. And this is much like what I was discussing before. Like I discussed in my video, you don't want to, even if you can Vanguard, you don't always want to Vanguard super close. In this case, because I was worried about artillery and mass DACA, I didn't deploy my Dryads who are just the zoning tool too far. Obviously, the Deepwood Scouts are a little bit in here, but not too far in the front. Some Way Watchers a little bit behind that, and our Glade Guard, which we brought a few of, are actually way in the back because they can't even Vanguard deploy. So our composition here, fairly conservative, but able to push in relatively quickly. We also do have a single unit of Treekin over here, looking to protect the Tree Man. And as you can also see here, we are very spread out. And this is very important if your opponent had, for example, dogs, which are pretty, even for Vampire Coast, you might see some of the scurvy dogs, you might see some bats, units like that. Having this much spread makes you very, very resistant against stuff like that. Now for my opponent, he did decide to go with a very, very wide build. And this is a popular composition that from what I've heard against Wood Elves right now, I was informed it's actually really workable and pretty easy to win with this build even against Wood Elves. So I might have to give it a shot myself sometime. Not necessarily with the Sirens, which is a bit of an interesting twist, but just a horde of zombies to soak up fire. Noctilus on foot, which means my ability to snipe him is going to be very, very poor. There's not much to be said there. He's just so tanky. He's got Invocation of the Neck, Drowned Dead, Arcane Conduit. Though surprisingly no Roth's Moondial, which I think is worth bringing, but perhaps a little bit of a mistake there. Queen Bess to apply some artillery pressure, and the rest of it is just very wide. We do have the Night Terrors here to apply a bit of fear, terror, and some slight mobility. A whole bunch of Sirens, 3 units of them. This is why I usually run Deep with Scouts with Swift Shivers, but I actually didn't bring any, so I'm screwed. And I'm not going to have much magic. Obviously, though, the Dryads can dice these guys up pretty effectively. Then, like we said, a whole bunch of zombie pirate deckhands all over the place. Pirates with pole arms, pirates without pole arms, handguns, non-handguns with pistols, and even the Black Spot, the Regiment of Renown, with halberds. So this is a pretty popular build as far as I'm aware, besides the Queen Bess, which is a bit of an expensive investment. And here I make my first misplay, and this is something you don't want to do. I've got my Waystalkers working down the Queen Bess. I'm going to take her down within the next couple shots. But I push forward with my Dryads for zero real reason, and I'm immediately going to take a huge loss here. So I've lost about 2,000 HP on these Dryads for no reason whatsoever, as well as 15 models. This is a huge misplay. No reason to do this. I could have easily stayed much safer, kept these guys safe, and whittled down the Queen Bess, been rid of her. And you can see there she explodes. The Way Watchers are amazing at killing Queen Bess. Really, this is something they do so easily. And my opponent is now down about 1,600 gold, which is really, really nice. This is why I personally don't think Queen Bess is good in this matchup. It's why I think Wood Elves don't have much issue with the artillery component either. In the meantime, my opponent is trying to now fire back with handguns, but of course their range is only 145, so they're not going to be matching the Deepwood Scouts, the Way Stalkers, the Way Watchers, Glade Guard, any of those units. But they are trying to whittle down the Dryads a little bit, which is a bit annoying. In the meantime, my archery is pouring in, whittling down these zombie pirate gunnery mobs, and we are doing a-okay. In the meantime, my Way Stalkers have started focusing on Noctilus. They're knocking them down a little bit, but really their damage is just not that good. They have actually picked off a few Sirens in there as well. My opponent is making a full frontal push because he has run out of options. With the no Queen Bess and the fact that I'm not going to give him a fight, he is forced to push in. You can see here we are going to commit the Dryads against the summoned zombie pirate mob and try to bog them down. Over here, these Dryads going to snare these zombies. My opponent here playing a bit of a patient game, keeping his Sirens back, and not sort of diving right in to the fray. And he is going to get some summons here. You can see my Way Stalkers are going to be forced to sort of pull back. And this is actually going to be a big issue for me. Now, obviously, we have managed our wide spread of infantry. This is why it's very important of these wide deployments, even on your defensive troops. Has managed to catch most of my opponent's troops. These Dryads over here holding their own against a horde of enemies. There's pirate handguns, pole arms, zombie pirate deckhands, all of these deckhands mobbed and tied down by single Dryads. So that's a huge win. Over here, these Dryads are going to be able to bog down this flank. In the meantime, our Withering Fire from all of our archery is actually going to be collapsing on the Knight Terrors, who are, in my opinion, a very valuable target and a very easy target as opposed to like the Sirens, who have missile resist or physical resist, really. So the Knight Terrors here getting completely dumpstered. In the process, though, our Dryads are going to get wrecked. We do hit them with an Earth Blood, but it's really not going to keep them in the fight. They're going to be completely screwed. But the Knight Terrors are going to fall, and they are like a 1,200 gold unit. That is going to be removed from play. In the meantime, the Sirens are busting through the front line. You can see the Way Stalkers continuing to chip away there. They're twirling around in melee. For your information, guys, Way Stalkers, an amazing close quarters unit nowadays. When I say amazing, not really that amazing. But honestly, they've got combat stats comparable to like an Empire Captain or a Paladin. So they can hold very, very well, especially against light infantry or Sirens and units like that. So in the meantime, Noctilus has hit himself with an Invocation of Neck, which is good. Another very beneficial thing. We're making Noctilus waste his heals on himself rather than wasting them on, or using them on a more valuable unit like Knight Terrors. In the meantime, these Sirens, though, busting through, and this is a big misplay here, not having enough Dryads to cover my everything. I kind of let these Dryads run in against the zombies. Now they're forced to turn around and try to intercept these Sirens. So my opponent doing an amazing bunker bust here. One unit of Sirens bogged down against the Tree Man and these Treekin, who will just take them to pound down. Treekin, of course, magic damage. Not the greatest melee defense, but amazing, or melee attack, but amazing melee defense. And of course, their lack of AP does not matter against Sirens, who have no armor to begin with. Same with the Tree Man. Despite being wailed on by all that shooting, he is going to be able to hold here and do a lot of hurt. In the meantime, sure, my opponent is shutting down my archers. Sure, he's getting on top of the Glade Guard, but Glade Guard does have respectable melee defense of 27. Over here, the Deepwood Scouts and Way Watchers are actually going to bog down these Sirens, keep them in place with the Dryads. We hit them with an Earth Blood, keeping these troops in the fray, and we're able to beat these Sirens down. So that is very important. Removing my opponent's mobility. Like I said before, remove those key targets. Like I said in my guide for kiting, remove key targets. So these Sirens, obviously high value. They've got physical resist. They're very quick. They are doing a lot of damage. So they need to get re-removed. Those are the priority targets. We also need to get rid of the shooting, potentially. And ideally Noctilus eventually, but we'll get to him once with time permits. Now, unfortunately, my opponent here is pressuring me very heavily with the zombies, and I was simply had so much to micro. I didn't put any of my troops in kite mode. Most of them were turned off fire at will, though. As the match progressed, I did start turning fire at will off on some of these units. And at this point, most of my front line is gone. Occasionally, I'm throwing the Dryads back into the fray. They are very low on HP. You can see these guys on a mere 16 models and just 500 HP, but still holding strong. By me time against these zombie pirates, these guys rally, coming back in. And the mass shooting, especially on these hilly maps, is giving me a big benefit against these pirate gunnery mobs. And we're able to whittle them down, bring them down, and start breaking them. Over here, the Way Stalkers fighting side by side with the Ancient Tree Man are doing their country proud, really chopping through these zombies. Like I said before, Way Stalkers an actually really solid unit in melee. They do have an issues with getting routed. They don't have the best of leadership, obviously. I think that leadership is like 60 or something. I want to say. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, it's only 60. So they're not the most amazing unit as far as just straight holding goes, but when push comes to shove and you need to buy time for your archers to do work, Way Stalkers are a great tool. For my opponent at this point, you can see the balance of power starting to sway decisively in my favor, but It's not all over. He has summoned some zombies to tie down my Treekin, so wasting my time there. Noctilus is now pushing towards the fray. He's still very, very healthy. And now there's this crossfire working on my Treemen while my archers are wasting their time. Or not wasting their time. Bogged down, gunning down gunnery mobs. So all these handguns, all these gunnery mobs in the back, just working down my Treekin, working down my Treeman, who's towering over the fray here for a very easy target. And things are starting to look grim. I do get a nice little awakening of the wood there, weakening the black spot a little bit, but honestly, that was probably a waste. The Treekin are going to try to bog these guys down, but these guys do have anti-large, which is going to make it pretty difficult. In the meantime, the Tree Man here is going to start getting whomped on by Noctilus, which we cannot afford. Noctilus, of course, amazing melee combat lord. He does have anti-large AP, all that sort of stuff. And he's going to make this Tree Man reconsider his life choices and run away. In the meantime, we do have a horde of shooting sort of whittling down my opponent's troops as he does try to approach. Our Way Watchers haven't really used too much of their ammo. They haven't had too much of an opportunity to shoot. Well, I guess these guys have, but my other unit, or if I can even find them, I had a second unit Way Watcher somewhere that actually hadn't used much of their ammo. They're over here. 42 models getting whittled down by Noctilus, and we are going to be starting to flee here, trying to escape because Noctilus is pressuring us very heavily. Our lord's routed, and things are looking slightly better for my opponent. They're pushing back towards the middle. In the meantime, though, my opponent has sort of applied pressure. You can see the ammo is starting to run low, so definitely that is one of the benefits of these very wide builds. That if you don't get the damage you need against targets you need, like these handguns or the gunnery mobs, then you're gonna end up getting screwed because you simply are not going to have the you're not going to get have enough ammo. You're going to get whittled down, and you're not going to be able to deal with everything you need to. Especially if you waste shots, for example, pirate deckhands. And I kind of have been forced to shoot these deckhands a bit this game. Over the Way Watcher is actually getting bogged down a little bit by these pirate deckhands with pole arms. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to pull these Deepwood Scouts back. These Glade Guard over here are buying time against the deckhands. Over here, these Glade Guard are going to mop these deckhands because they do have the melee stats for that job. And over here, we are shortly going to commit our Waystalkers to bog these guys down and buy me some time. Unfortunately, these handguns continue firing, but, you know, not the end of the world. Over here, these Glade Guard moving in to try to tie down the black spot, shooting as they close the gap, and they're going to be able to get in there and start chopping them up. Glade Guard, like I said, decent melee stats. Unfortunately, getting surrounded by Noctilus, this is counting as being a rear attack, so that is a bit of an issue. But, you know, what can you do? Deckhands, in the meantime, are trying to push through. Our Way Watchers running away. Just very brave elves here, staying away from my opponent. And over here, the Tree Man has kind of rallied. He is sitting there overlooking the battlefield at this point. And my opponent has actually managed to drag the balance of power back into the middle. Because our ammo is starting to run out. Our Deepwood Scouts over here completely out of ammo. Our Glade Guard over here almost out of ammo. These Deepwood Scouts down to their last legs. Sure, we're whittling down these pirate deckhands. Sure, we're getting some good value there. But it's just getting very, very tough and very difficult. In the meantime, our Waystalkers are managing to mop up these pirate deckhands with pole arms. Our Tree Man sort of still towering over here, looking fancy, running away. And now as Noctilus is going to try to push in, we are going to start crossfiring him with all of our Deepwood Scouts or Waystalkers especially, trying to whittle him down. So at this point is sort of the end game. My opponent still has Noctilus very healthy, which is giving this balance of power probably in his favor at this point. And on the flip side, he doesn't have much that can fight in melee. The Queen Bess crew is god-awful in melee, even though they have boatloads of HP. Honestly, the HP, I don't actually understand who thought this was like a good balancing factor, giving the crew massive HP. They've got something like 5,000 or so of the HP on the Queen Bess is the crewmen, which is pretty nuts. Noctilus, though, is going to try to close the distance. Unfortunately, he does get into Heck here, but honestly, into Heck, he's almost hit his healing cap, so it's a bit wasted, a bit squandered. Waystalker's mopping up more zombies on the flank here, and as he tries to advance, the Way Watchers are going to be able to just turn on to fire at will and start whittling him down. And you can see he's taking all those arrows to the face, trying to charge in with his pole arm, but it's just not going to be enough. Sure, he's able to get some damage. Sure, he's able to get in because I'm not quite on top of my micro, but we're definitely getting some value. Over here, we're doing mop up on these black spot. The Waystalkers, of course, still do have a good amount of HP. They've still got their good melee stats. They're going to be able to push in, clean these guys up. And honestly, most even the Deepwood Scouts, sure, their melee stats are not good, but if push comes to shove, they can outfight a crippled black spot or a crippled handgun. Elsewhere, well, Noctilus is actually going to get out on a Tree Man. A bit of a misclick, a bit of a miss micro here on my part, and the Tree Man is going to go down, getting chopped down. A last victory for Noctilus before he gets pincushioned with more Way Watcher shots. Simply not giving my opponent the opportunity to do anything here. Just running away like a coward. Firing as we run. At this point, of course, we are on a fire at will, whittling Noctilus down and yeah, he's having a bad day. Unfortunately, ammo is basically out at this point. These Glade Guards still have a little bit. But my opponent at this point just reduced to Noctilus, the Queen Best crew that's chasing these Deepwood Scouts off the field, and the Gunnery Mob, which is about to get engaged in close quarters by my Waystalkers, who will make mincemeat out of these guys. And Waystalkers, like I said, really solid melee unit, even though they're not really meant for it. At this point, that is going to be army losses for my opponent and a Pyrrhic victory for the Wood Elves. So I think this match really demonstrated all the things you want to be doing with your kite builds. Obviously, it wasn't a full-on kite build. I did have some tools in there, like the Glade Guard, the Treekin, and the Tree Man, that were much more about stand and fight. They were more oriented towards the late game once you wiped out your opponent's key units. But definitely, as far as gimmicky builds go, I think this is one of the more kite-heavy. Because you do have the 2 Waystalkers, the triple Deepwoods, and the 2 Way Watchers for that extra AP oomph. Now, mistakes were made. I did allow my opponent to get those Queen Best shots that he really shouldn't have gotten if I was competent. But you know, that is what it is, and it happens. Just don't do that normally. Don't, because it can cost you. You can see the Queen Best there got 29 kills, and most of those were in those first shots. I think like 2 shots against Dryas, and potentially that had a huge impact on the game because my front line was so small that I really needed those Dryas to be in good shape. But things like spacing, things like making sure your shots are going to the key targets. I made sure to wipe out the Sirens and the Night Terrors very early on, then focusing on sort of, well, with Waywatchers, I made sure to get rid of the Queen Best first, which I was actually good priority targeting, then the Moongulls, then the Sirens. So basically we got rid of my opponent's key counters to me. And after that, we could sort of take our time. We could whittle down Noctilus, we could deal with, in some cases, if it was really under a lot of pressure, we could shoot down the deckhands. If we were under less pressure, we could take our time and shoot the handguns, whittle down to things like the Black Spot and that sort of stuff. So at that point, it was a bit situational. But really, the target firing there was very important, and I think it demonstrated what you need to be doing with your kite builds. Of course, spreading out was also pretty critical there. And we did get most of our ammo off. Most of our shooting, even though some of them did take losses, which was unfortunate, most of our shooting did get its ammo value. Sure, the Waywatchers at the end still had a good bit of ammo left, and I'd lost a lot more models on them than I should have. But, yeah, I think the ammo value there was definitely there. As for a few other things, well, Kite is really potent against the Vampire Coast. I do know that these super wide infantry builds are very popular against the Wood Elves. Often, apparently, a popular comp as well as just a horde of zombie pirate gunnery mobs with the pistols because they can keep firing while they're advancing. Personally, I think it's still a very bad matchup for Vampire Coast, and I think you can definitely abuse the hell out of their bad mid-range shooting. But I don't know. It's maybe it does work in some cases. Regardless, the match was pretty close. The Waystalkers, obviously, and just the Waywatchers at the very end carrying the day. It is very important to bring at least a few AP units into this matchup. Don't just overcommit to non-AP, because then if your opponent brings surprise pick, like say Rotting Leviathans or Prometheans, or if your opponent brings Noctilus on foot, you might just not have the tools to deal with them. So it's important to deal with. Regardless, good game to my opponent Tyrion. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you found it entertaining and gave you some scummy ideas on how to play Wood Elves against Vampire Coast. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, and subscribe, and share. If you have any comments, any criticism, any questions, do not hesitate to post them down below, and I will do my best to respond as soon as I can. I do thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.